Hello gamers, and welcome to another Tower of Fantasy video. In this video, I will be talking about how to choose the weapons you focus on. Every game has a blueprint that you have to follow, and while there is a certain level of freedom, you don't want to cripple your own performance. So hopefully, I can help you make the right choices. Before I start, I would like to ask that if you end up finding this video helpful, to consider helping the channel out by leaving a like and subscribing. Back to the topic. Before we get into the nitty-gritty details, I want to mention that I will not be referring to specific weapons, but I will be talking in general terms that will help you understand how to select your weapons, regardless of the units that get released in the future. Being anything other than a whale that can afford to spend thousands on the game will come with some limitations. The main one being that you should focus only on 3 to 4 weapons, at least for the first half of the year of playing the game. And during this video, I will explain why this is the case. Of course, this is just a strong recommendation. You can choose to do what is most fun for you. That being said, I believe some tips I offer in this video will be useful to you regardless of what you choose to do. Alright, so the first aspect and the most impactful in Tower of Fantasy is Shatter. The shield mechanic is present in almost all combat aspects of the game, and it is countered by Shatter. While enemies have shields, they will reduce the damage they receive by 50%. As for boss monsters, once they gain a shield, they will have a counter that charges up over time and every time they receive damage. If the shield is not broken before the counter is full, they will use extremely strong abilities and even wipe mechanics. Because of this, it is extremely important that people use weapons with high shatter during the shield phase of bosses. And it is also the reason why one of your weapon slots should always be shatter, regardless of the role you play. Please don't be that one person that grieves their teammates and themselves by using weapons with low shatter during the shield phase. An important note here is that shatter is not affected by your damage or the level of your weapon. So even if you have low CS, you can be just as useful as a whale during the shield phase. But shatter is not the only aspect that defines a weapon. The counterpart to shatter is charge. And while it is not as necessary as shatter, it is still important. Having a weapon with high charge means that you will be able to use discharge skills more often. Discharge skills will provide the ability to break out of crowd control, and often enough, discharge skills will provide the best abilities the weapons have. And as you can imagine, being able to cast them more often is quite important. So, having at least one weapon with decent charge can prove very useful in many encounters. For the second weapon slot, I highly recommend a weapon with high charge. This leaves the first slot empty for weapons that will enable your build, be it a weapon that enables your role or a weapon that gives you a lot of utility. The choice will be yours, as this is an extremely variable slot. To help with this choice, we will take a look at another very important aspect of weapons, and this is element. To better understand why weapon element is extremely important, we will take a look at elemental attack and the various ways to increase this. Please be aware that elemental attack increases more than just damage. This affects your healing and shields and any effect that scales of attack. So the straightforward way to increase elemental attack is with elemental resonance. Some weapons will have a passive buff that activates when you have 2 or more weapons of the same element equipped, like Nemesis, Frigg, Claudia or Cobalt. These will straight up provide a 15% increase in your elemental attack. The next way, and the one that will provide most of your attack stat, is equipment advancement. When you use the advancement upgrade function, each time you reach a new star, it will increase one of the random stats on gear. The higher numbers on equipment will be elemental attacks, and the perfect equipment will roll 5 times in the same elemental attack, with the exception of boots and gloves. That is where people will go for crit. So, because of these 2 reasons, the best way to play is having 2 or even 3 weapons of the same element. After you play the game for a decent amount of time, you will be able to have multiple sets of equipment, and you will be able to focus on multiple elements. But for the first 3 to 6 months of playing the game, I strongly advise to focus on one element, with 1 or 2 different element weapons on the side for those solo activities that might require different elements. Another note here is that tanks will have a bit of an easier time using different elemental weapons, as their equipment focuses on protection rather than attack. But if they decide to also focus on DPS role equipment, they should follow the same guidelines. The last thing to consider when deciding what weapons to focus on should be their range. This is definitely not a priority, but from time to time it might play a role in encounters. If you can help it, it is advised to have a mix of ranged and melee weapons, because sometimes you'll encounter enemies that enjoy flying around or enemies that you'll have to keep a distance from, so having a ranged weapon in those scenarios might prove useful. In conclusion, I strongly believe that you should always have at least one shatter weapon in your loadout and focus on one element. If you can help it, you should consider having a weapon with high charge and at least one ranged weapon. This is my advice to you. If you found this video helpful, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. See you in the next one, adventurers.